58 times. That is how many times Venice flooded in a single year, after Italy spent $8 billion and 17 years building a system specifically designed to stop it. The gates exist. They are real. They are enormous. Each one weighs 300 tons. There are 78 of them. They sit on the floor of the Venice lagoon, waiting to rise and hold back the Adriatic Sea. Italy called this system Mose. Engineers called it a miracle of modern engineering. Politicians called it the salvation of the most beautiful city on Earth. The first flood barrier was supposed to be operational by 2011, then 2014, then 2016, then 2018. The gates finally activated in 2020. Venice flooded again in 2021, and 2022, and 2023. The ocean did not get the announcement. So here is the question nobody in Rome will answer clearly. If $8 billion and 17 years cannot stop the water, what exactly was all of it for? To understand Mose, you have to understand what Venice is losing. Venice is not just a city. It is a 1,600-year-old civilization built on 118 small islands in a shallow lagoon on the northeastern coast of Italy. Its buildings stand on wooden piles driven into the lagoon floor centuries ago. Its streets are canals. Its foundations are permanently wet. For most of its history, Venice has lived with flooding. The phenomenon is called acqua alta, high water. Seasonal tides push Adriatic seawater into the lagoon. Streets fill, ground floors flood. Residents pull on rubber boots and carry on. But in the 20th century, something changes. Industrial water extraction from the mainland lowers the ground level beneath Venice by 23 centimeters. Sea levels begin rising. The floods become deeper, more frequent, more damaging. In 1966, Venice experiences its worst flood in recorded history. Water rises 194 centimeters above sea level. Priceless artworks are destroyed. Ancient churches flood to their altars. The world watches in horror. Italy responds with a national commission. UNESCO gets involved. Preservation funds are established. The world agrees. Venice must be saved. In 1984, the Italian government creates the Consorzio Venezia Nuova, a consortium of construction and engineering companies, and gives it a single mission: design a flood barrier system for the Venice lagoon. The design that emerges is breathtaking in its ambition. 78 hollow metal gates, each one hinged at the lagoon floor. In normal conditions, they lie flat, filled with water, invisible. When a flood is forecast, compressed air pumps out the water. The gates rise. The lagoon is sealed from the sea. The project is named Mose, Modulo Sperimentale Elettromeccanico, Experimental Electromechanical Module. The name is also a reference to Moses parting the sea. The estimated cost is $2.2 billion. The completion date is 2011. Italy signs the contract. The consorzio begins work. The lagoon holds a promise. Nobody examines who exactly controls the consorzio. Nobody asks why a single private consortium has been given a monopoly over an $8 billion public project with no competitive tender. Construction begins in 2003, and the scale is immediately staggering. The Venice lagoon has 3 inlets connecting it to the Adriatic Sea: Lido, Malamocco, and Chioggia. Each inlet must be fitted with a complete barrier system. Each barrier requires underwater concrete caissons, enormous hollow boxes sunk to the lagoon floor to house the gate hinges and mechanical systems. The caissons are among the largest underwater concrete structures ever built in Italy. Each one is manufactured on shore, floated into position by barge, and sunk with millimeter precision onto the lagoon floor. The engineering tolerance required is extraordinary. The lagoon floor is soft sediment. The gates must align perfectly, or they will not seal. At peak construction, over 3,000 workers are employed across the 3 inlet sites simultaneously. Underwater welding teams work in the murky lagoon water. Divers inspect foundations by touch as much as by sight. Barges carrying prefabricated gate sections navigate the narrow lagoon channels daily. The gates themselves are extraordinary objects. Each one is 20 meters wide and up to 5 meters thick. They are made of steel, filled with seawater ballast when at rest, and designed to operate for 100 years with minimal maintenance. The compressed air system that raises them runs through underwater pipes connecting to pump stations on shore. By 2008, the caissons at all 3 inlets are in place. The first gate hinges are installed. Photographs released to the press show enormous structures emerging from the lagoon. Italian newspapers celebrate. Ministers make speeches about protecting civilization. The project looks unstoppable. It looks inevitable. But in the accounting records of the Consorzio Venezia Nuova, documents that are not public, not audited independently, and not visible to the Italian parliament, a different kind of number is quietly accumulating. The invoices do not match the work. The first problem is corruption, and it is not subtle. In 2014, Italian anti-corruption investigators, the Guardia di Finanza, execute a series of dawn raids across Venice, Rome, and Milan. They arrest 35 people, among them the former mayor of Venice, Giorgio Orsoni, the president of the Consorzio Venezia Nuova, Giovanni Mazzacurati, senior officials from Italy's National Water Authority, regional politicians. The investigation reveals a systematic bribery network operating for over a decade. Construction companies paid kickbacks to politicians and officials in exchange for contracts. 25 million euros in bribes is documented. Investigators believe the real figure is higher. Money flowed to political parties across the spectrum, centre-left, centre-right, regional parties. Nobody was clean. The project stops. Not officially, but the arrests paralyze decision-making. Key executives are in jail or under investigation. Contract approvals freeze. Subcontractors stop receiving payments. Construction slows to a fraction of its previous pace. The second problem is technical, and it surfaces in the gate testing. When engineers test the first completed barrier section at the Lido Inlet in 2013, they discover a critical design flaw. The gate hinges, the massive underwater pivot mechanisms that allow each 300-ton gate to rise and fall, are corroding. The lagoon water, mixed with Adriatic salt and industrial pollutants, is eating through the hinge material faster than the design predicted. Each hinge requires individual inspection. Many require replacement. The replacement process requires draining the caissons, an operation that itself takes weeks per gate. The third problem is geological. The lagoon floor beneath the Chioggia Inlet is shifting. Soft sediment, disturbed by years of underwater construction, is settling unevenly. 3 caissons at Chioggia have moved fractionally from their design position. Fractionally, but enough. Gates that must seal the lagoon to within centimeters of tolerance are now slightly misaligned. Water will pass through the gaps. Engineers design remediation plans. Each plan costs more money. Each plan takes more time. 3 problems: corruption, corrosion, subsidence. None were in the 2003 project plan. By 2016, the budget revisions have become a ritual humiliation. The original $2.2 billion estimate is long gone. The official cost reaches $5.5 billion, then $6.8 billion, then $8 billion. Each revision is announced quietly. Each one blames unforeseen technical challenges. None of them mention that 25 million euros in documented bribes inflated every contract for a decade. The Italian Court of Auditors, the Corte dei Conti, publishes a report in 2017 finding that the Mose project represents one of the largest misappropriations of public infrastructure funds in Italian post-war history. The report identifies 1.5 billion euros in payments that cannot be accounted for by completed work. The money exists in the records. The corresponding construction does not. Politicians respond with new committees, new oversight bodies, new promises of transparency. Italy has had 6 different governments between 2003 and 2016. Each one inherits Mose. Each one announces reform. Each one quietly continues funding it, because stopping now means losing everything already spent. The moment the project could have been saved was 2008. At that point, the caissons were in place, but the gates had not been installed. An independent audit, then, could have exposed the billing fraud, replaced the consortio management, and renegotiated contracts before the most expensive phase began. Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi, whose party received documented kickback payments, did not order an audit. He increased the project budget instead. By 2019, the completion date has been rewritten 4 times. The new target is 2021. Engineers working on the hinge corrosion problem say privately that 2021 is not realistic. Their reports are marked internal. On November 12, 2019, Venice floods to 187 centimeters above sea level. It is the second worst flood in the city's recorded history. Only the 1966 disaster was higher. The Basilica di San Marco floods for only the 6th time in 1,200 years, and the 2nd time in 2 years. Ancient mosaics are submerged. Medieval crypt chambers fill with seawater. The damage to the basilica alone is estimated at 5 million euros. Mose does not activate. It cannot. The gates are not yet operational. After 16 years and $8 billion, the system designed to prevent exactly this flood does not exist in working form. The images of St. Mark's Basilica submerged go worldwide. Italian newspapers run the same photograph on their front pages. La Repubblica's headline, "Venice drowns, Mose is not there." Corriere della Sera, The $8 billion barrier that wasn't ready. The Italian parliament holds an emergency session. Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte visits Venice. He promises MOSE will be operational within months. He does not explain why it isn't already. The European Commission, which has co-funded portions of MOSE through regional development grants, requests a full accounting of how EU funds were used. The Italian government's response takes 8 months. The November 2019 flood becomes the moment the public understands what the auditors knew for years. This is not a project that is almost finished. This is a project that has consumed $8 billion and still cannot do the one thing it was built to do. Italy does not abandon MOSE. It cannot afford to. In October 2020, after 17 years and $8 billion, the gates activate for the first time during a real flood event. Venice stays dry. The barriers hold. For one morning, the system works. Italian newspapers celebrate. Politicians claim vindication. The engineers allow themselves a brief moment of satisfaction. This is the false recovery, because the October 2020 activation reveals new problems immediately. The gate mechanisms, designed for decades of operation, show wear after their first real deployment. Salt encrustation on the hinge assemblies is worse than maintenance schedules predicted. 3 gates at the Malamocco inlet require immediate inspection after the activation. 1 gate fails to lower fully after the flood passes. It takes 11 hours to return to rest position manually. Maintenance costs, originally estimated at €80 million per year, are revised upward to €110 million annually. Then, €140 million. The system requires more frequent servicing than designed. The lagoon environment is more corrosive than the models predicted. In 2021, Venice floods again despite MOSE. The gates were not raised. Authorities judged the forecast flood too low to justify activation. Their judgment was wrong. In 2022, the gates malfunctioned during a critical deployment window. In 2023, a gate hinge assembly at Chioggia requires emergency replacement, the third such replacement in 4 years. The Consorzio Venezia Nuova is formally dissolved in 2021 and replaced by a new public body. The new management inherits a system that works, sometimes, under the right conditions, with constant expensive maintenance. Nobody knows how long the gates will last. Today, the gates of MOSE rise from the lagoon when the forecasts are right and the machinery cooperates. Venice still floods. Less often than before, but the city that was promised permanent protection from the sea has received conditional, intermittent, expensive protection, contingent on accurate weather forecasting, functioning hydraulics, and €140 million in annual maintenance that Italy's government debates funding every budget cycle. $8 billion was spent. 17 years passed. 35 people were arrested. €25 million in documented bribes changed hands. €1.5 billion in payments remain unaccounted for. The medieval mosaics of St. Mark's Basilica, damaged in the 2019 flood, are still being restored. Some sections may never fully recover. The sea level in the Venice lagoon continues to rise. The scientists' projections for 2100 show water levels that MOSE, even functioning perfectly, was not designed to handle. The gates were built for the ocean of 2003. They are fighting the ocean of 2025, and the ocean is not standing still. Italy spent $8 billion to save Venice for future generations. But if the sea keeps rising and the money keeps disappearing, which future exactly did they pay for?